Thank you for coming today. All right, quiet. I'm Rachel Silva, and I work for the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Okay, great. If you haven't already picked one of these up, we have the 2015 Sandwiching in History and Walks Through History schedules available. They're over on this table in the corner. If you haven't got one of those yet, I encourage you to pick one of those up. And I'm going to tell you all about the history and architecture of Little Rock Fire Station number 2. Located in the Macarthur Park Historic District, which was listed in the National Register of Historic Places in 1977, Little Rock Fire Station number 2 opened in February 1917. The building served as a fire station until the late 1950s. At that time, station number 2 was closed, and its fire equipment was transferred to a new station that was built at the northwest corner of 9th and Sherman Streets, which opened in 1960. The old fire station, this building, has had many uses since the late 50s. Since 2006, plans have been in the works to rehabilitate the building and turn it into a hostel and a museum. The Firehouse Hostel and Museum is expected to open later this year. The early history of firefighting in Little Rock is very interesting, so I'm going to tell you about that first. Before 1892, when the city of Little Rock passed an ordinance to create a full-time paid fire department, fire protection in the capital city was done by volunteers. The majority of volunteers were merchants and businessmen trying to protect the contents of their buildings. And as you can probably imagine, fires occurred quite frequently during the early 19th century as people relied on an open flame for light and heat, and most buildings were made of wood. In 1830, William Woodruff, editor of the Arkansas Gazette, reported that there was, quote, not a single fire bucket, much less an engine and hooks and ladders within Little Rock's limits. For years after this, Woodruff advocated for the purchase of fire equipment and the organization of a fire company. But the city couldn't afford a fire engine, and nothing happened. In January 1839, the city obtained a $5,000 loan from the State Bank of Arkansas to purchase a fire engine. The following month, a volunteer fire company was organized. A maximum of 30 men could volunteer for the fire company, and each person who enrolled had to serve at least a 2-year term. You were not allowed to quit without permission. Each volunteer firefighter was required to keep 2 fire buckets at his home. The captain of the company had the authority to command any firefighter or any bystanders near a fire. The newly acquired fire engine finally arrived at Little Rock in September 1839. However, the volunteer firemen quickly realized that the new engine was not a panacea. It weighed almost 5,000 pounds, and it was pulled by hand by the firefighters. So once the engine had been hauled to the site of a fire, firemen then had to pump it by hand to produce adequate water pressure. 7 to 12 men pumped on each side of the engine at the same time. Each man could only pump for about 10 minutes before they were worn out. So they had to operate in shifts. And if you remember, I said a maximum of 30 men were on that first fire company, so that, not many shifts to go through. And keep in mind, the only water sources were the Arkansas River, the town branch, a public cistern, if you could find one, or a private well. And as Little Rock expanded further to the south, buildings were often too far from a good source of water to be saved in the event of a fire. By the early 1840s, Little Rock's first volunteer fire company had more or less disbanded due to poor leadership and its inability to effectively fight fires. In 1846, a second volunteer company was organized. It was known as Little Rock Fire Company. The group adopted stricter rules about membership and attendance at both training drills and at fires. Imagine that. They want you to show up for the fire. So this slightly improved fire protection, the Little Rock still didn't have a hook and ladder company. After a series of devastating fires in 1854, the Defiance Hook and Ladder Company was organized. The Hook and Ladder Company provided firemen with a second option in the event that the engine either couldn't get to the fire on time or there was not a good source of water available. A fire hook, or a long pole with a big hook on one end, could be used to pull down the walls of a burning building. And then the burning pieces would be removed from the site and allowed to burn out, and that would keep the fire from spreading. Fire protection improved significantly during the 1860s and 70s. By the late 1860s, the Little Rock Fire Department consisted of 4 volunteer fire companies: the Pulaski Fire Company, Defiance Hook and Ladder Company, the Torrent Fire Brigade, and the Pat Cleburne Steam Fire Engine Company. And this amounted to about 175 members and officers. In addition to an increase in participation, technology improved at that time. The Pat Cleburne Company, organized in 1866, had a steam-powered engine that could be pulled by hand or by horse. That was a big deal. Also in the 1860s, annual May Day parades were held to honor firefighters, giving them a sense of pride and social responsibility. A sometimes friendly competition developed between the fire companies as well. Companies raced to the scene of a fire to, quote, throw first water. They were in a competition to see who could get their hose hooked up and water on the fire first. So while fights over the water source sometimes delayed the actual firefighting, this competition probably improved fire protection overall. The lack of a reliable source of water continued to plague the Little Rock Fire Department until the late 1870s, when the city contracted with the privately owned Little Rock Water Company to install a city water system, including fire hydrants. The relationship between the city and the water company soured after just a couple years, and in 1880, a new contract was awarded to the Home Water Company, which provided 50 hydrants. In 1881, the company was forced to remove the valve stems from the hydrants because, of course, the city had not paid. However, the firemen knew how to operate the hydrants without the valve stems by that time, so the water company proposed to take out the hydrants altogether. Before the hydrants were removed, though, merchants agreed to pay the water company $50 each time its water was used to put out a fire. And the city eventually paid up, and the Home Water Company provided water for the city and the fire department until 1889. By the mid-1880s, all fire companies in Little Rock had horses, although some of them belonged to the individual firefighters. The Union Fire Company, organized in 1888, became Little Rock's 5th volunteer fire company. Beginning in the early 1880s, the City Council considered turning the volunteer fire department into a salaried city department. Throughout the decade, the council gradually created salaried positions. For instance, in 1885, the driver of a hose truck was paid $65 per month, hose cart, not truck, was paid $65 a month, and the driver of a hook and ladder was paid $70 a month. On February 8, 1892, the City Council passed Ordinance Number 396, creating a full-time paid fire department for Little Rock. The attire of the St. Louis Fire Department was adopted as the official uniform for the Little Rock Fire Department. The volunteer fire company names were changed to Engine Companies 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the Defiance Hook and Ladder Company became known as Hook and Ladder Company Number 1. In addition to risking life and limb, firefighters had a grueling work schedule. They were on duty continuously, with the exception of scheduled meals at home. Most firefighters lived near their assigned stations, and they took turns taking 1-hour breaks for meals. In the early 1890s, the Little Rock Fire Department consisted of Station Number 1 at 409 Gaines, Station Number 2 at 1107 Main, Station 3 at 124 North Louisiana, and Station 4 at 511 East Markham. Additional stations were soon added and older facilities were upgraded. Little Rock received its first motorized firefighting apparatus in September 1911. The Little Rock Central Fire Station, next to City Hall at Markham and Arch Streets, opened in August 1913 and signified the beginning of a new era for the city's fire department. In the late 19th century, I just told you where all the stations were located. Little Rock Fire Station number 2 was located in a 2-story brick building at 1107 Main Street. The building featured a corner bell tower, which was used to sound the fire alarm. In order to provide better fire protection to the southeastern portion of the city and to accommodate the new motorized firefighting apparatus, or the fire trucks, officials decided in 1916 to move station number 2 from the 1100 block of Main Street to a new location at 503 East 12th Street, presently known as 1201 South Commerce. 12th Street used to be right out here where the parking lot is, so it was 503 East 12th. The new Craftsman-style station opened in February 1917 and occupied a lot on the western edge of the city park. And you all know we're here in Macarthur Park, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Macarthur Park, and then we'll get back to the fire station. Now called Macarthur Park, City Park didn't actually become a park until the early 1890s. After Arkansas became a state in 1836, then Governor James Conway petitioned the federal government to construct an arsenal at Little Rock to protect its residents from perceived dangers on the frontier in close proximity to Indian Territory. Construction of the Little Rock Arsenal began in the late 1830s. The main building, also known as the Tower Building, not to be confused with the Tower Building at 4th and Center Streets downtown, was completed in 1841. The arsenal eventually had more than 30 buildings. During the Civil War, Confederates occupied the arsenal from 1861 to 63 when federal troops took Little Rock. And then after the war, the arsenal was used as a military barracks. In the early 1890s, the federal government announced that it would close several smaller military bases around the country, and the Little Rock Arsenal was on that list. However, a deal was struck in 1892, whereby the city of Little Rock traded the federal government 1,000 acres on Big Rock Mountain in what's now North Little Rock in exchange for the arsenal grounds. The new military base on Big Rock was named Fort Logan H. Roots, and the arsenal grounds became known as Arsenal Park and then City Park. Only one building from the Little Rock Arsenal, the Tower Building, remains today. In 1942, City Park was renamed Macarthur Park in honor of General Douglas MacArthur, who was born at the Arsenal in 1880. And Macarthur Park is Little Rock's oldest municipal park. In the 1930s, the Tower Building housed a school for physically handicapped children on the first floor and a lodge hall on the second floor. In 1942, the city moved its Museum of Natural History and Antiquities into the Tower Building, and it remained there until the late 1990s when it moved to the River Market, and it's now known as the Museum of Discovery. And that'll come into play about this building too. The MacArthur Museum of Arkansas Military History opened in the Tower Building in 2001. In 1936, the Works Progress Administration constructed a Museum of Fine Arts just to the west of the Tower Building. Several additions have been built since that time, and in 1963, the Museum of Fine Arts became the Arkansas Arts Center. Okay, back to the fire station. When Fire Station number 2 was built in 1917, it featured elements of the Craftsman and Spanish Revival styles of architecture. However, the Spanish Revival style design elements are no longer extant. And if you didn't see this whenever you came in, I have some of these around the room. Who has one of these color postcards? If you do, share it with your neighbors. Who has one? Somebody has one. Okay, there's a couple around. If you can show people nearby you, that'd be great. And I've got one here. This is a color postcard of this fire station, about 1920 maybe, not too long after it opened. So you can see it's got Spanish Revival style parapets that used to be on the east and west gable ends. These beautiful shaped parapets with finials on the side. Does everybody see that? What I'm talking about here? Okay. If you don't, I'll show you later on. And also, you'll notice it's got a big, bright red tile roof. Okay. That's gone too. The craftsman style characteristics on the building, many of those are still in place. They included its large front porch, which is no longer there, it's enclosed. The area across from me and behind most of you, behind this wall, was an open front porch. The front porch was supported by a series of tapered wood columns on stone bases, and the building had exposed rafter tails, which it still does, false half timbering in the gable ends, widely overhanging eaves with triangular knee braces underneath, a mixture of exterior materials, and multi-pane casement windows, mostly on the second story. So if you're paying attention, as I told you, the only thing that's changed out of those craftsman-style characteristics is the front porch. Originally, the station's 2 engine bays were accessed from underneath that front porch. Somebody asked me as soon as they got here, where did the trucks pull in? You can see this white wall here in the doorway and the white wall there in the doorway. Originally, those beams on the outside of that, either one of those spaces, were the engine bays. They would have pulled in here and over there, 2 engine bays. Fire Station number 2 served its original purpose until 1959, when a new building was constructed for Station number 4 at the northwest corner of 9th and Sherman. The Little Rock Fire Department decided to close Station number 2 and move all of its equipment over to the new station on the north side of Macarthur Park. And the new station opened in February 1960. And a little bit about that station, it doesn't look like it used to. Many of you probably remember that. Station at 9th and Sherman was renumbered, and it's now station number 2 to make things more confusing. And that building was remodeled between 96 and 98, increasing its height from 1 to 2 stories. It also increased the number of truck bays across the front. But this building, the fire station's decorative parapets and the tile roof were likely removed about 1960, when the building was renovated to house other groups like the City Beautiful Commission, the Little Rock Garden Club, and a program for senior citizens called Senior Citizens Activities Today, or SCAT. That's what it was called. Another significant part of the early 1960s renovation was the removal of the original interior staircase. Like the staircase that I'm standing on is not the original staircase. And the installation of an exterior stair on the off the north porch. So some of you picked up this photo whenever you came in. This black and white one was taken about that time, about 1960. And you can see the front porch has not yet been enclosed, but they've boarded up the engine bays, the truck bays, and they've added a little staircase underneath the front porch. And they also took out the and went up. You couldn't get upstairs from inside down here. All right. In the early 70s, the front porch columns were removed, and the space was completely enclosed with brown brick and aluminum sash windows. The side porches were also enclosed at that time. Sometimes these side porches, they left the columns, they left the supports, but they kind of bricked those in and added some new, like, solid metal doors into the side porch area. A variety of programs continued to operate out of the building, including Meals on Wheels and the Council on Aging, at least until the late 1980s. The Arkansas Museum of Science and History, or present-day Museum of Discovery, then located in the Arsenal Building in Macarthur Park, used the old firehouse for collection storage as well. When the Science and History Museum moved out of the Arsenal Building in '97, the city's Parks and Rec Department took over management of the old firehouse. The old fire station was damaged by the tornado that devastated parts of downtown Little Rock in January 1999. The second-story eaves were basically ripped off the building, and some of the second-floor casement windows that you'll see whenever you go upstairs were actually blown off and found way over in the parking lot closer to the Arts Center. But the City of Little Rock spent about $75,000 to make repairs to the building after the tornado. The eaves were repaired and rebuilt. The windows that had been blown off, they got those back, reglazed them, and put them back in. Side porch enclosures were removed, and the aluminum windows that had been in the front porch enclosed area were replaced with what's there now, a little bit more sympathetic casement windows in the same openings. And the building was then used to assemble sack lunches for the city's parks program. In 2006, Hosteling Arkansas Incorporated signed an agreement with the City of Little Rock to rehabilitate the old firehouse and turn it into a hostel and firefighters museum. After a decade of planning, fundraising, and hard work, the Firehouse Hostel and Museum hopes to open later this year. When completed, the facility will provide about 30 beds at very affordable prices. And Linda and I were talking between maybe, what, $20 to $23? Is that maybe a figure?
That's pretty close.
Okay. Firefighting memorabilia will also be displayed throughout the building. The Firehouse Hostel will be the first of its kind in Arkansas, as it will be affiliated with the worldwide network of Hosteling International, which assures that member facilities meet quality and safety standards at affordable rates. The funding for the project has come from a variety of sources. The City Parks Department has contributed labor, and the city received a Historic Preservation Restoration grant from the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program to pay for masonry and window repair, painting, and exterior stairwell doors on the north elevation. But a large amount of work that's gone into the building has been done with the help of donations and the dedicated group of volunteers, some of which are here today. So another round of applause for those folks that volunteered to help. That was great. Some quick details about the interior of the building, and then you can look around or ask questions. The building has about 4,600 square feet. You can point out the original openings I did of the truck bays here and here, and also the enclosed front porch. I'll point out, I can't really get over two of them, but on either side of this room, you see like where the fire poles would have come down. Do you guys see that? The openings on either side. The original white glazed brick, everybody see what I'm talking about on the walls? That's all original to the building. And the firehouse, the hostel group, actually, whenever they came in here, the walls were covered with wood paneling that had to be removed, and then they uncovered this glazed brick. But guess what? There's some pieces of it down here behind you guys on the ground, and then in the maintenance room too on that wall. It all looks like that. It was all black because there had been a fire inside the building, I think in the 70s, so they had to scrub all that white glazed brick to make it look like it does now. And that was all done by volunteers. Most of the original...
Rachel,
Yes?
sign-up sheet for new volunteers.
Okay, I'll say that at the end too. Most of the original windows are still in the building. They reconstructed the main staircase, I told you that, based on where they thought it was originally. The original wood floors are upstairs. Upstairs bathroom was originally one huge restroom. You know, firefighters, it was mostly men, so everybody used the same restroom. Now it's divided into men's and women's. And when the hostel opens, the first floor will be used as a common area where people can socialize. You can cook back in the kitchen and eat, do your laundry, whatever. The upstairs rooms will be separate, men's and women's quarters, and the rooms in the enclosed front porch portion. I think this one over here would be the hostel manager's room. Somebody staying here to kind of look out whenever some people are here at the hostel. And then this one over here, I think, is a handicapped accessible room for families or individuals that might need that. Our next tour is Friday, February 6th at the Matthews Clausen McCullough House in Sherwood.